Hi all, DT Neil coming back at you with more storytelling talk, writer talk, thoughts, science fiction, genre, fantasy, horror. Um, Picking up a little bit more about cyberpunk. One thing that I think is really great, at least in the manifestations of it, here and there, not as often as it ought to be, is the critiques of consumer culture inherent in cyberpunk. And all too often, it's easy to like when you could see people in a science fiction universe, and you're like, well, what do they do in their spare time when they're not busy saving the universe? Like, what are they doing? And in some representations of cyberpunk, you do get this idea of an awareness of consumer culture, advertising, how things are presented. Perfect example is Max Headroom. I don't know if you watched that series. That's a very cyberpunk series, but the idea of blipverts, lethal advertising. I love that. That's to me very, very, very cyberpunk, and I think that's a good thing because there is a lot we take for granted, a lot of stuff in our worlds without really realizing the presence of the overwhelming presence, almost really a totalitarian presence of advertising in our lives, marketing in our lives. You can't go anywhere without seeing advertisements and things. And for me, one book that I forever love, and I just feel like it's never gotten its appreciation that it deserves, is Space Merchants. This is a new release of an old book. Book's been out. It came out in like 1953, and Frederick Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth wrote it. And it is a wonderful. It's kind of like Mad Men in a science fiction universe. It's really good. It has a lot of valid, trenchant comments about consumer culture and advertising, and existing in that world where corporations run everything. And they were prescient in their time writing that in 1953, and I think the moral lessons inherent in the Space Merchants are largely lost in this world. But for anyone paying attention, and especially anyone in looking into something like cyberpunk, I think can find value in it. It's very good stuff, and I think that I'll show the cover again just in case, because I like to do that. You can see it, the Space Merchants. There's real value in there. I always plug that one. I've been doing that for decades. I think I first read that one in my 20s, so I've been doing it for like 30 years. Long time. And, the awareness of the psychic damage that can be inflicted by the marketing culture, the advertising culture, is pronounced. That we're living in this existence just so that we're making some people money at the top. There's a lot to be mined there. And I think we're seeing a lot of the downstream manifestations of that in 21st century America, particularly. We're getting there. A lot of other countries are still looking after their citizens, but in ours, it's like the idea of a citizen is almost quaint compared to the idea of a consumer. Like a consumer is the highest American function. You just consume. You're an open mouth, just gobbling up like Pac-Man, everything around you. And you don't really care where it comes from. You just want it now. Convenience for the consumer. And the idea of any civic identity is almost just disregarded or looked down upon. And I think for humanity, and especially in America, for us to have some kind of progress, we are going to have to move into more of a citizenship awareness. And it's hard to square that in the face of the consumer culture, because consumer culture is inherently voracious and nihilistic and opportunistic and shallow and transitory and transactional. All of those aspects are woven up into that. And part of the task for science fiction writers and thinkers is to articulate a better way out for humanity, because the alternative is either, again, post-apocalyptic nightmare or cyberpunk nightmare. And that's profound and significant.